like to call to order the work session for the month of October for the Mayor and City Council for the City of Taneytown. Ask the Councilman and Mayor Pro Tem Carl Ebaugh to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. One council member is out of town and therefore not with us. Everyone else is present and accounted for. First order of business is the approval of the minutes for September 4th and September 9th regular meetings. And you had on your desk this evening when you came in the meetings for the closed session dealing with financial matters of September 17th. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to any of those minutes?
On the September 4th meeting minutes, the last paragraph, last sentence, Betsy Baker, well, the name of the award is Philanthropist of the Year. So it's not top philanthropist. So the Carroll County Community Foundation awarded Betsy Baker the Philanthropist of the Year award. Okay. And then on the next page, the last bullet, Councilman Zambetti reminded Mayor and Council of and that should be FSK Advisory Council fundraiser.
All right. What else?
That's all I had.
On September 9th, under council member committee reports, that should be Peebles Department Store.
Oh,
Yes. Anything else? I had a question or addition or correction. Event discussion in September the 9th, where we were talking about the beer garden, and the motion was to approve by Zambetti, and it carried 3-0. Councilman Ebaugh was opposed. Shouldn't it be 3-1?
No. That's
Carry.
It's carried 3-0 should be a 1.
Yeah.
What is it? I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Correct.
yes, you're right.
Councilman, oh, okay, I thought it was
Yeah.
abstained, yeah. 3-1, okay.
All right. What else? If you see anything in the minutes that were provided you tonight, you can certainly motion to change those Monday night. All right, under resolutions, ordinances, and agreements, we have for introduction no new resolutions, ordinance, and agreements, but up for adoption is an amendment number 1 to ordinance 04-2008. And this has to do with the 2008 bond proceeds. Joe, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, you, in 2008, you went out to borrow money and issued general obligation bonds for various projects that related to the water and sewer system, the streetscape project being the most notable one. You also went out in 2011 and borrowed more money for different projects. What we found out now, in hindsight, is there is still money available from the 2008 bond proceeds that was not spent on the water and sewer projects which they were designated for. And so we cannot spend that money on other water and sewer projects, even though we need to, without authorization in the bond ordinance to do that. And the project that we're talking about is the Enhanced Nutrient Removal, the ENR project for your wastewater treatment system. In 2008, we didn't know we needed to do it. In 2011, we only had an idea of what it was going to cost, and we borrowed enough to figure that out. Well, now in 2013, we have a great handle on what it's going to cost. And so this ordinance will allow the leftover 2008 bond money to be spent towards the ENR project. That's basically, it doesn't borrow any new money, it just it allows it to be taken out of the bank account more or less and spent towards that project. So this is a positive thing. You could say, well, what if you don't do that? Well, then we could refund this money to the bond holders somehow, and then we'd have to borrow more money to pay the others. So you take it out of this pocket or you take it out of the other pocket.
Questions on that, folks? We'll deal with that on Monday. We'll also deal with ordinance 06-2013, purchases and contracts, and this is the one you'll recall we've been discussing over the last several months that involves the raising of the limit to go to a non-bid situation from $10,000 to $25,000. Anybody have any questions on that? Hearing none, that'll be up for approval. The three resolutions, two of which deal with the appointment of the clerk and the treasurer, 2013, 15, and 16 respectively. We will take official action to appoint our new positions, thus separating or finalizing the effort we made to separate the clerk treasurer position into two separate
Right.
units, or
And you will swear them in, have a little
swear
swearing
them
in.
in just like I would a council member or police officer.
Clara will have the oath of office where you'll have them sign and you'll swear them in just like anyone else.
All right, that's good. And next, we'll have our usual water allocation resolution, 2013-17, dealing specifically with the month of October. Any questions on that? All right. Moving into the city manager's reports. Henry, do you have some comments to offer us from your report?
Yes. We're getting closer, as I just talked with the fiber optics people today, and we have a schedule for later this month for the installation and the hookup of the fiber that's currently in the city building now. As you recall, the cable came in the building, and now we need equipment to hook our equipment to that. So that's going to be happening and should be completed by next month. With the item 2, the interim mini storage, that went before the planning and zoning, and they were granted a reduction in the footprint, so they're putting a smaller building out there. Well, 17, we keep getting delays on this, and the latest delay, I know it says ventilation issues. I got a little bit better understanding of what that really means. Is there are sensors in there that detect when there's a gas leak and turn the ventilation system on to, ventilate the room, remove the gas from the room. There's problems with the sensors. They're working on that, and that's why, that's where the current holdup is at this time. I don't really have a date, and I don't know if Rick
provided one in his report. I haven't had a chance to look at that as to when that should be done.
Just curious, how did they find that there were problems with sensors?
Tested?
Just testing?
Okay, and this is becoming part of the legendary monthly comments, and that's the creamery, the demolition grant. We're still waiting to hear the results on that. We haven't heard, and there's nothing new more to report. And again, the next legendary item is the employee manual, which has been on hold for a couple of months simply because I've been busy playing treasurer. And the next one's a good note. I don't have to do that anymore. The treasurer is on board. She started Monday, and she's doing well. I think we have a good person there. As well as in the clerk's office, we have a good person in the clerk's office. Too busy typing. Oh, she concurs with that, that's pretty good. And the other personnel issue is the receptionist, and she's on board. And that pretty much covers those things there. Two other things that I want to do, and first of all, I really want to thank Joe, because Joe has stepped up and basically, because of my situation, he's volunteered to go out and look for additional grants. And you can all have his report. But what I just want to tell you, Joe, is we already have a grant with the Water Quality Financing Administration. And I don't think we want drinking water out of our wastewater treatment plant. So I think you can scratch the drinking water office. I don't think that's going to work.
I mean, it's certainly not, it's not an all-encompassing list, and there's a lot more research to do, but that's just, primary research that I've done into it, so.
So maybe if you scratch that one, you might have a better opportunity with what remains, because I don't know how many people really, although I do think that taking that water and converting it back into drinking water is a good thing, and it is being done in other locations. As a matter of fact, the closest example that I can give you of that is Frederick, because what we discharge, they drink. So the other thing that really happened most recently in the past couple of weeks is we had a demonstration. Well, what happened was, the long story is, we had a piece of equipment that failed on us, and that's the sensor that's used to find leaks. So LB Water came out and they set up a demonstration of a product that they have, okay? And it's a leak detection system. It's a little bit more than just going around and doing the wanding. And they did this, I think it was a month-long demonstration, and basically what it is there are sensors that you put on top of the valves, and they listen and they gather information. You can ride by these things, pick the information up, and the data is collected that way. After it's collected, it's then analyzed, and then they point out where there's a high potential for leaks. Then the next step of this thing is they do what's called a triangulation, where they actually put up additional sensors in the area where they suspect this to be a problem. And in part of this demonstration, they found a spot that they said was a 30,000 gallon a day leak. Okay? So they went out, they took markers, and we dug. And lo and behold, there was I think it was a 5-inch water main that had the pipe was totally cracked in half. Now, this leak has been going on for a very long time. And the reason we know this is because when they did the repair, immediately after they did the repair the next day, down at the pumping station, the York Street pumping station, we had been receiving water in that vicinity, even when we were doing construction. They could not figure out where this water was coming from. I don't know if you recall that, but the fact is we were pumping water out of that so we could do the construction daily. And as it turns out, the day they fixed this, the next day, within a day or two, I won't like I say instantaneous, but very shortly after that, that dried up. That's where the water was going. So it never went to the surface like a normal leak might do. What it did was, because we had that 194 water line and the streetscape project where we had put a bed of gravel in there and pea gravel, it followed that path, the path of least resistance. And so it came to the surface. Now, having said all that, you know, if you do the little calculations that I did, a 30,000 gallon a day leak equates to almost somewhere around, I think it was $15,000 loss we were taking on a daily basis. And so what I asked him to do today was, I wanted to know some of the information that, you know, the performance of that beyond that. They immediately realized that our wells dropped in pumping, the need to pump 6 hours a day. And the grand total of that somewhere, and so what that also means is on a grand total of water loss and pumping, it turned out that we had 130,000 gallons less that we were using. So this has, on a demonstration basis, just saved us a tremendous amount of money. And so, and the reason, well, Rick, as a matter of fact, Rick did not believe it was that much. He said it can't possibly be that much. And what happened was, because he was saying the water levels, the pumping levels have not changed, the rates. And that's because this leak has been going on since at least prior to streetscape. Because after streetscape, what we saw a drop in all of our production. And we assumed that was really good, and that was because of the work that we did. Lo and behold, we still had this leak that we did not find. Now, in addition to that major leak, they have found some other leaks and gone to those spots and actually done repairs. But this, I wanted to point this one out because this was a big one that had been going on for a very long time. Now, what I guess I have here an estimate of what that system would cost us. And I personally would recommend that we go ahead and purchase this. Let me see. Wendy, how much they're going to vote for? How much does the vote go for? 25,000?
Yeah.
Oh, well, hold off. I only need you guys come Monday. But, I'm still, I think that this is something that we should really look at and actually buy. And I think it's good, I think if we found this leak that we did not have any knowledge about, then I think there's probably others that we don't know about as well.
Henry,
Yes, sir.
I know we've been paying someone to come in and monitor our system,
Correct.
and how often do we do that
Well, we've been trying to do it annually,
annually?
and that's $5,000 a year.
My guess is that leak was there the last time they were here. Maybe not, I'm not sure. but-
I'm not, I think the last time here's what, historically, I think the guy came through once and did the whole city,
Yeah,
okay? And then we didn't do it for a period of time. When we finished with Streetscape, we had him come in.
Do it.
At least twice.
yeah.
To come in and do it. But I'm not so sure that he really went up into that area. but I'm not sure he would have found it either.
Well, maybe not. This thing kind of has proven itself. How labor intensive is this?
Well, that's not. Basically, you know, I went and saw the demonstration, and there are little transmitters, and they're like little radio things. They're magnetized. You open a manhole and you put them right on top of the valve, and they listen. They're listening devices. And what we have is, you would have with this is a transponder or receiver, much like we go around and read the water meters, the same thing. You can just drive by and it activates and picks up the information. And the initial expense on this thing really is in the areas of what's called a logger set. You know, I no sense reading. I don't half understand what these things really mean myself. I know the process. I know what they do. There's a computer that's involved with this thing, and I think that the biggest expense on this thing is the what's called an FCC sound set pod correlating logger set.
Is this something that somebody has to learn how to use?
They've already, well, yeah, but the guys are already pretty well savvy on it. I mean, I went to a demonstration, and they've been working with these people for about a month now. They pretty much know how to use it already. Pardon me.
Now, this isn't something that's going to take a lot of schooling or anything.
No.
And this thing that you say you go along and you drop in, do you drop it one place and then another place and then another place?
Here's what we did in this demo was they had 8 of them.
Okay.
Now, they moved them around the city, but my goal in the long run is to have them on all of our valves eventually. And, you know, just to do that, these little sensors are $600 a piece, so they're not like,
So once you put one there, you leave it there, and then the computer reads it?
yes. You're right.
Do these sensors transmit that data someplace?
Yeah.
Or do we have to physically go look at it to see
No,
if it's working?
it's, as I explained, it's, you know how we have the meters
Yeah.
on the water meters? It's the same thing. They take out this sensor, it comes out, it activates, it transmits to it, it's called RF technology. It transmits by riding by. They can put it in the truck and ride by and pick up all this information. But, you know, you do this on a regular basis.
But you physically have to go monitor the
Right.
data.
You
I
physically,
mean, it
what
doesn't
happens
appear
after you
on a
collect it?
computer screen someplace.
I'm sorry?
It just doesn't show up on a computer screen someplace. You have to physically go out and read this data like you would a water meter.
Correct. You go out and well, there's not that, you know, you only put them on the valves, you know, the mains, you know, so I don't know how many there are of that, but the thing is that this, for example, one of the things that we would do is like, we've got a new Meads Crossing. We would just put that in there and require them to buy these things and put them on as they're constructed. So that would be no cost there to us. But in the long run, I think, you know, to start off with, we start off with 9 of these sensors. And I don't know how much that would cover, but I know that we did it with the same amount of sensors, but we had to move them to get the whole city. You know, eventually, if we get this system eventually on an annual basis, I would like to put in, you know, more. And then you have the whole city, you don't have to put the manpower into going out, lifting the lid,
Exactly.
putting them in, put it back down again.
Well, once you put one of these in, you're not crawling up and down through, you're just reading it on a machine, correct?
Right.
Like we do.
They didn't crawl in, and to tell you what they did not crawl in. They have a rope,
Yeah.
drop it in, hook it up,
Yeah.
and, you know, tie the rope off to the ladder, and that's it.
So it's a matter of reading it with a machine
Right,
like we
right.
do with the
Right.
water
This-
meters.
It's no different than the way we, if you look at the same principles, it's the same principles that we are currently doing with the water, our water reading. They go out, they take the logger out, they gather the information, bring it in, load it in the computer, download the data, process it, and do the water bill. The difference on this one, though, is it has an additional piece to it that actually does, much like the GPS, this, triangulation, okay? This was so accurate, the guy took a spray can, went here, between here and here, dig. It's like, knock on a rock 3 times and you get water. And that's what they did. They dug down and they have some pictures I can bring from Monday night to show you.
So what is the price of the entire system?
$22,985. I'd like to put that on the agenda for you guys to approve that for Monday.
That includes 9 sensors, you said?
Yes. Well, we're getting 6 additional ones.
Okay, this 22,000 includes 9.
9 sensors, right?
Okay.
Includes 9?
9.
Okay.
And I think what we'll do is on an annual basis, we'll budget in, I'll have to ask Rick, how many places can we put this, how many we need?
I'd like to know that.
Yeah.
How many do we need?
But we can do that, we can roll that out on an annual basis as opposed to having to,
I'd just like to know how many we
Yeah,
need.
yeah. Well, I don't know, okay. Rick comes back from vacation, he's gonna be busy.
I want to
He'll
know,
be
do we
busy.
need 100 of them?
Yeah. But like I said, I think we can work it out, and any new development area, we just make it mandatory. When you put the system in, this is included as part of the system. We've done that with other things.
All right. What else for Henry?
It's yours. Okay. So we'll put that on the agenda for Monday.
Oh, Henry, I have one thing, I guess for the IT gentleman. I noticed that a lot of the past agendas and minutes are up on the website, but the stuff for, upcoming meetings isn't up. At least I checked yesterday, and the stuff for tonight hadn't been put up.
The agenda?
Yeah, for this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had a comment in that regard too on Dan's report. His last item is updating the city website with current information, and I think there's a whole lot more that needs to be done than updating the city website with current information.
I'm sorry?
That website needs to be thrown away and started over. What is being provided on the website is not relevant to a city website. So that's and I understand you got a whole bunch of other priorities, but somehow or another, we need to get that on the priority list. Is to be able to develop a website that is beneficial to our citizens.
And his last item does cover that.
Well,
It says.
it's not more, it's a lot more than updating, is what I'm
No,
saying.
and exactly, if you read it, it says a deadline for updating and a new design.
That's right. Well, I just don't want that to drop through the cracks, because people more and more rely on electronic information today, and unless we're providing that information, we're falling behind the curve.
Right.
So that's the whole emphasis. I mean, we ought to be able to, a citizen ought to be able to go to that website and do everything they can do in the front office down here. There should be no reason that somebody can't deal with the city through the website as well as they deal with the city through the front glass down there. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I understand.
Anybody else have any comments on the Henry's report or the department head's report? I had one more comment on our new munitions factory, I guess, is what I need to find out about. First of all, I'm not sure where number 1 Dunbar Drive is. Can anybody tell me that?
Dunbar Drive, that's,
George Street and down.
right, George Street, the end of George Street.
End of George Street.
Yeah,
It's in the industrial park where Cambridge Rubber was?
Yeah.
the back of it, yeah.
Yeah, the old Dunbar building.
Right, the old Dunbar building.
So we have an ammunition assembling business going in down there.
No, that's not happening. So where did you see that?
I saw it in the planning and zoning report, and I saw it in the zoning
Planning and
certificates.
zoning.
Jim, that's not, I think they withdrew that, right?
They haven't withdrawn it. My understanding is they've run into some building code related issues that they haven't been able to resolve. So
It's in the report.
the planning commission granted a waiver of the site plan process because they weren't constructing anything new to the outside of the building or expecting to generate traffic and things like that. But there were a number of things building code related that needed to be done after the zoning piece. So they need to satisfy zoning first, then they move on to the building code piece. And apparently there were some issues that arose with the building code and the proposed location of the building. I haven't been told that they have given up on the project, but I have heard that there have been delays and they're not sure this location is going to work, but I don't know that it was completely closed yet.
Okay.
All right, well, I just didn't know. Somebody asked me, did you know we were putting a munitions factory in Taneytown? I said, no, I didn't. But now I do. I understand.
Jim, I told you that would happen. Yeah.
Any other questions on the departmental reports?
Oh,
Or
before we
Henry's
go,
report.
yeah, I just noticed something on here as well. We're going back to street sweeping again, okay? We haven't got anything signed yet, but we're entering into an MOU with Littlestown. Littlestown has the equipment, and they've agreed to do our street sweeping, so the first sweeping will occur on its normal schedule, 25th of this month.
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah. So Rick is getting all the, all the signage is back up, uncovered. We're gonna be making, and I think they're even going so far as to kind of go door to door to post something for
I
the
got one
people.
today.
Well, there you go, see? Good. So you won't get a
What
ticket.
do you wanna bet I
so
forget
You
about
won't get a ticket next, Monday then. Is that what you're telling me, like you did last time?
What do you want to bet that I don't remember that? A week from Monday.
Well, actually, I'm hoping you do. It'll fend off the rest of the people.
But you've done your part. There's no question about that. All right. Legal report, Jay.
Okay, you all have my written report. Let me highlight a couple of the things that they're on there in some sections, just to kind of see where you're going to go. First of all, we're involved in the finance checkup project that we've been dealing with, and that's underway. It's a critical path item for many of the other items that we can't move ahead with certain other projects until we get the finance issues worked out. So we're still working on that. There's not really that much difference to update since our last special session. Hopefully we'll have some results by November. I mean, that's the time frame we're thinking about, and maybe it'll be different, but that's what we're thinking about. So related to that is the huge E&R project, and we met about that today with CDM, the design engineers, and basically the new treasurer was there, and the city's, I guess, project manager now, Kevin, was also involved. And the idea is to get a handle on the cost and get a handle on a strategy of how to deal with MDE on this. You know, that project was estimated to cost $3 million, and now it's in excess of about $6 million. And part of that, after today's meeting, could be expected, because you have to remember, they put an estimate basically on a concept plan, you know, a line on a piece of paper, and as they started developing it and fleshing it out, well, it got to be a little bit more detailed. The upside is we think we may be able to get more money for the design. Just to give you the details, the design was based on the concept value, right? $3 million, and they take 10% of that. That's what they'll give you for design. Well, if it costs $6 million, wouldn't it seem that you would get 10% of that? Not necessarily in MDE's logic, so we have to go through and see if we can do that. So that's a positive aspect. There's also a positive aspect where we went through the last items. As you recall, there are eligible costs and ineligible costs. And we went through a list of ineligible costs, which means the city pays for those, and tried to figure out what can we remove, what can we redo, what can we do without. And this is not like we're getting rid of the bells and whistles anymore, okay? We've got rid of the bells and whistles a year ago. We are down to the point where we're making sure that these are just absolutely necessary. These are things that have to be there, or else they're not going to be involved. And at this point in time, you're getting down to the nickels and dimes, to the point where it's almost not worth doing anymore, because it costs more to go through the process than try to save the $5,000 here or there. But the goal, of course, is obviously to bring the difference between what MDE is going to pay for and what the city has to pay for to make that number smaller. That's the goal. And we're not anywhere close yet, okay? I mean, I can't say we're ready and that's it. What you can see on the horizon is we're going to let the engineers work with their counterparts at MDE and see whether or not they can work something out, get a higher percentage of MDE contribution. This isn't through like politics or strong arming. This is through the actual numbers and the design, showing them, hey, this should be counted and stuff. If they are not successful or not successful the way we like, then we'll move to the politics of it, saying, we have an interesting situation in our plant that other places don't, and that's the biomag aspect of it, okay? The biomag, and I don't need to get into what that is, but it's an innovative technology that was first approved to be used here in Maryland because of the work that Taneytown did. So that's a little innovative project. It's not the same as if you were another city who just said, well, I'm going to build it and I'm going to use the biomag technology. It's already proven at that point in time. So obviously it costs more for us to basically trailblaze. So that's the ENR project. There was a schedule, and I just want to make sure we're all clear on the schedule, that we were hoping to go out to bid by the end of October, advertising for bid. And at this point in time, we're thinking that we're going to delay that for a period of time until we can work out the finance checkup. Remember, I told you that's the critical path, and also these issues with MDE. There's no question we have to do it. We're under a consent order to do it, but the idea would be maybe this isn't one where we rush to contract and say we'll work it out later with the contractor. Maybe this is one where we work it all out up front so we know what we're getting into. That should mean that we don't have as many cost overruns, which is what we have seen in the past with a lot of the projects. So ENR is taking up a huge amount of time. That related to the finances is just really eating up staff time, everybody's time. Okay, moving on to the next subject is annexations. Forever, we have been talking about the Stumptown Road annexation. And I keep saying, oh yeah, that's going to happen next month. Well, my calendar's next month has finally gotten here, okay? Whoa. I know, it's surprising. What we were waiting for is, and the details on Stumptown Road for everyone who doesn't know, is there are two properties that have failing septic systems that are small properties. I mean, there are 10,000 or less. They're adjacent to the city boundaries. Their septic systems are failing, and they're near Creekside. And so the health department ordered them to solve their problem and ordered us to help them. Our code says we cannot extend water and sewer services outside the town limits. So to make this all work, it had to have an annexation occur. Well, that's the invisible line moving from one side of their house to the other side of the house. The dollars and cents to move the actual pipe is what's been holding them up. And they are finally eligible for a grant from the state to make this happen. So they will be able to pay the impact fees, to pay to move this forward. So that's all positive news for them, which means everybody's ready to move now. They can't get the grant until we get the construction permit for the ENR plant. Okay, the ENR plant's on that side of town, they're over on this side of the town. In MDE's mind, they're related, that's fine. But we need to start the annexation process. To do that, we need the property owners to enter into an annexation agreement. You know, that's the only way we do these things anymore. Since I've been your city attorney, we basically have an agreement of this is what you're going to do for the city, and this is your expectations, laying out the dollars and cents, and this is what we're going to do for you. So the annexation agreements have gone out to the property owners along with the consents that all the tenants have to sign, because some of these properties are, one of the properties is a rental property. And we've gotten one back, so we've been 50% successful. We think we're going to get the other one back next week, which means the annexation resolution will be on your agenda for November. So, Stumptown Road's coming along. And what we wanted to try to do was do all our annexations at once, because while you see them on the agenda once a month, there's a lot of going on behind the scenes and working with the county to deal with annexations. They have to go to the county, they have to be commented on by the county, and it's better if you can batch them together. So the other one we're really trying to make happen is the Ballinger Park annexation. Now, you know that one of my other reports is going to be about real estate. The batching this together is not going to happen anymore, because the real estate, if we purchase that, and I'll get to that in a minute, will basically mean that the annexation has to be reconfigured. So you'll see Ballinger Park sometime later. That's the way that goes. So then we get to the real estate issue, and so on Monday's agenda, you know that you all have been meeting in closed session for, I don't know, a year maybe, discussing the purchase of potential real estate, and so we are to the point where we believe that we're going to be bound with a contract, and if that all happens the way it's supposed to on Monday night's agenda, we will have a public discussion of what the real estate is and what you're paying for it, and all the 9 yards on that, and then you'll be able to vote whether you're going to ratify the contract. And of course, we're only going to do that if we're in a position to do that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it in public. So that's what we're going to do on Monday. And then the last is an item that, something to think about. And this is something that, if you agree with, we're not going to go out and do it tomorrow because, again, we have a lot other on our plate. But you've heard it mentioned tonight with the ammunition factory, but this comes up a lot. And Jim Weeprick and I have talked about this before. You realize that if somebody wants to do something on their property that requires a site plan, okay, so just we'll make it up. They want to build an addition, they want to build a building, whatever it is, it requires a site plan. A sign would go up on the property saying, hey, this is when the hearing is at the Planning Commission, and you can contact the Planning Commission to see what they're doing, and you can come express your concerns. And, you know, the poster child for this would be what we dealt with the Carol Vista and Antrim Mini Storage. I mean, when we finally got a handle on the process and everybody knew to come to the meetings and express their concerns when it was being discussed, it worked great. Well, there's a loophole possibly. And the possible loophole is when a person comes in and says, my project is not very big. It doesn't involve any changes, maybe. Maybe it just involves very minor changes. I want to waive the site plan process, meaning that they're required to go through the process, but there's an exemption for them because they don't disturb much land or things like that, and they can get out of it, okay? And that would be the ammunition factory. Okay. So they can come in and say, hey, I don't want to go through the process. The Planning Commission then makes the decision. If they had to go through the process, the property would be posted and everything like that. But if they don't, nobody knows about it. So the thought might be, maybe there needs to be a notice provision put in the code that says when somebody's coming in to ask to be waived from the site plan, there has to be notice of some sort. Maybe a sign, maybe a notification to property owners or something, so that if I'm the neighbor, I can come in and say, hey, wait a second, I don't want them to not be going through the site plan. I want to know what they're doing. Take it out of the ammunition factory, let's make it Dunkin' Donuts. You remember that from several years ago? That site plan process was waived, by the zoning administrator before Mr. Weeprick. And the neighbors then came in and said, well, I want to know, am I going to be able to hear the drive-through speaker? Where are the lights going to be faced and things like that? If we had a notice provision, they at least have the opportunity to come up and say, I have these concerns, I think they should go through the site plan process, or I think they shouldn't. So the problem with that, and I don't want to be long-winded on this, but the problem is the exemption was there to streamline the process when there's no big deal. So if I come in and I say, hey, I'm just putting a garage on my house and it's not a big deal, do I need to go through the process? Oh, no, go ahead and build it, go do your thing. If you were going to require a notice thing, now it's becoming a little bit more of a big deal. Now it's going to take some time to get you in front of the planning commission and have people comment. So that's what you need to weigh, and I want you to, kind of go home, think about that. You can use the ammunition factory or Dunkin' Donuts as an example of one, and you can use the other ones would be where, the Taneytown History Museum, for example. They're coming in, they're buying a building, they're changing the use, that triggers the site plan process. They're not changing anything that would go through the site plan, but they needed a waiver. Well, if with this, what I'm talking about goes into effect, there would be a process where they would have to get on an agenda, and waiver notice would have to happen in advance of that agenda, so it might not be as instant as people are used to.
We've had that happen, several times. Like Commissioner Fraser's properties was one of the things as well. I came in for a waiver. So,
Historically, when we waive a site plan, we usually get ourselves in trouble. I mean,
That's what I was gonna
that's
say.
just the way that it's been in the past. Or at least we get questioned, I'll put it that way.
Correct.
Could it be tied into, could it be tied into change of use, requiring a site plan with any kind of change of use of the property?
Yeah.
Would that cover what we're trying to do?
That's already a requirement. And, we tried to set it up like the old nuclear launch thing, that the planning commission chairman and the zoning administrator have to agree that it should be waived. But in practicality, it still puts a lot of stress or weight on two individuals. It's not the decision of doing it, it's the lack of public process that you hear. It's I didn't know they were doing a munitions factory, when it's really not a munitions
Well, that
factory.
was
They're
my
gonna put some
point
stuff
exactly.
together, right? I didn't know they were gonna do it. There was absolutely nothing in the site plan ordinance that they would have to comply with if you made them go through the site plan. There's no stormwater, there's no water and sewer impact, there's no schools, there's no construction, there's none of the stuff that you would see from the outside. So to tell them to go through the site plan process is a wasted effort, which is why they were waived out. But is there a need to have a notice of what's going on? And that's where we're trying to get at.
I think yes.
So you can ponder that, and we can certainly craft something, but do you want to be informed? And I always kind of look at it from this situation. I send you emails out on things that just says, this is just for information, because people may ask you. Well, if you're a neighbor and you hear this in McDonald's, your first thought's going to be, you're going to be mad at the city. How could they let this happen? When in fact, it's not a bomb-making factory, it's not a munitions factory, it's not even probably going to happen. That's the type of thing, So, that's it. Those are some of the things.
Well, before we do leave this, you've asked them to ponder.
Well,
I'd like to ask for a time to ponder. Typically, what'll happen is, if we don't take some direction, and I'm not saying it has to happen today, but I think we should at least make a note of that in our minutes for like Monday. And I don't know, maybe if that's enough time. If it's not enough time, then we'll move it to the next month's agenda. So we can get some direction, because a lot of times these things fall through the cracks.
I'll make it easy or hard. I'll bring it up next month under my report. Good. Give you a month to talk about it. Because, it's easy to say, yeah, we want notice, because that's what we're in the business of, providing notice. You got to put the shoe on the other foot. What if you're the property owner that just wants to do a little thing, and now what are you telling me? Because remember, we have an agenda policy. It's not as simple as calling up here. There's got to be copies made, there's got to be things submitted. That's 2 weeks in advance of a meeting. The planning commission doesn't meet at the end of November and end of December, so if you're in those months, you're out of luck until January. So there's that too. So I'll put it on my list and I'll bring it up.
Trying to strike a happy balance.
Yeah, a balance, and is there any way to streamline it as well?
Yeah, that's.
Well, I have an idea. Do you want to hear my idea before? I don't want to taint your stuff, but we have a process that's similar, but not exact, with zoning. And for example, if you, and I'm probably not going to get this exactly right, but we don't need exact. If you want to do something in your side yard, let's say your side yard has to be 10 feet, and you want to extend into your side yard or your backyard a certain amount of distance, we can have what's called a regulatory or administrative variance, whereas you apply and the administrator sends out letters to all the property owners and says, this is what we're going to do. And if you don't complain, we're not going to have a hearing on it. I mean, it says it in
Yeah,
nice
something
words.
like that.
So the property owners all get notice. They can call up and say, and any one of them can say, I have a problem with it. That doesn't stop it. That just means that they now have to go through the normal process and you have your normal hearing. And they could still get it. It's just the fact that you have the hearing. The only issues that we have with that, and I'm not sure exactly how we deal with that, but I know we send property owners, neighboring property owners, that. So let's go back to like a Sheets. Sheets was a big concern to some people in Carroll Vista, but they're not a neighboring property owner. So do we post the, I mean, there still comes down to how do you get the audience to say, how do you get people from saying, I didn't know about it? You know, who can complain? But that's some possible middle step, and I'll talk with Jim, and he and I will try to figure some other ideas. But you need to think whether you want to do this. It'll
Okay.
work great for the most of the parts, because we do. Every time we waive something, we hear about it. But you're also going to hear about it from, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith that are caught up in the red tape.
Just the
Yeah.
doghouse.
Right. So, all right, that's all I have on my report.
Anything else, folks? All right, unfinished business.
I
Any
have-
unfinished business?
Yeah, I have something there, Jim. Unfortunately, Jim Weeper's with us tonight. We've been working on sustainable communities for, seems like forever. What's it been, Jim, about a year?
Quite good.
Yeah, not quite. And we've made great progress, but there's been a couple of suggestions that the other side of this, the committee has made, and Jim can articulate this a lot better, I think, than I can. So Jim, if you would kind of explain what we're looking at. Actually, this might not even have any effect on us, or no one might care, but we want you to know about it.
I'll start by passing out things we can
Sure, thank you.
Well, we went quite some time without having any feedback from the state on our sustainable community application. We did eventually get some comments back, and the comments had to do with what we could do to promote housing investment in the sustainable community area, and also some questions about the area itself. What I handed out this evening, the first page is an aerial with a portion of the SC area laid out. They have areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 circled on there. The state is questioning, why do we want them in our sustainable community area? Areas 1, 2, and 4 are in basically because they were in our community legacy area that the state had already approved, and we were basically starting with that as our outline, and then we added Fairground Village, Tawny Village, and Cloverberry to it. So Area 1 and 2, we really weren't particularly invested in, so we said, okay, if you don't want the green fields, that's probably not a big deal. Area 4, however, was designated in our comprehensive plan as this area we were going to create a new urban mix zoning district, something that was going to have kind of high-density development that hopefully would put some more residents right next to downtown and hopefully serve as something of an additional catalyst for downtown reinvestment. But the state would like us to take that out as well and possibly revisit that if we have another proposal for the area. We had a concept plan presented for that area several years ago, and it never got beyond the concept stage. Area 3 is the 22 acres that we own that's part of Memorial Park. So we did get them to keep that in, because we may want to apply for community legacy funds to do a park project, so we want to make sure that stays in. And it sounds like they are comfortable with that staying in, but areas 1, 2, and 4, they would like to take out. The second page is basically my email response to Department of Housing and Community Development about the map areas. It goes into a little more detail than I just did. But the last page is a response to their concerns that we didn't provide much detail in terms of what kind of housing policy sort of things we can do. What can we do to promote reinvestment in our existing housing stock or improve housing conditions? In conversation with DHCD, our situation isn't what the Department of Housing and Community Development sees, I guess, statewide. They seem to have quite a focus on, call it affordable or workforce housing, things like that. And within our sustainable community area, we really don't see that housing is not accessible to people who earn less than the average median income, or wait, AMI, I'm trying to forget what AMI, what the abbreviation is now, but, or what it stands for. But in our downtown, basically, we have plenty of affordable housing, but the issue we have sometimes is that as the affordability increases, the quality may drop somewhat. So we're thinking, well, what could we do to keep things affordable and maybe ramp up the quality of that housing? So a couple of the things that we proposed, we got the work group, the Sustainable Community Work Group, back together, and we talked about a couple things that might be limiting, residential investment in the downtown area. And one of the things, and it doesn't affect a lot of properties, but there is a requirement for dwellings in the downtown district to meet the lot and yard requirements of the R6000 district. And most of the downtown lots are smaller. There isn't a minimum lot size for the downtown district. And we do have a couple buildings that do have vacant second floors. And I'm not completely clear. I haven't had anybody come in and actually apply. But if they did, I would possibly have to send them to the Board of Appeals because properties don't meet that 6,000 square foot minimum for a single family. And as you may or may not know, if there's a building that has one dwelling unit and a storefront, that dwelling unit is considered by our code a single family dwelling, not an apartment. So a case like that, they would have to have a 6,000 square foot lot, and a lot of our downtown properties don't. So we could revisit that in the zoning code. That would take a code text amendment. The second thing would be possibly to expand the revitalization ordinance once again. I know just a couple months ago we had it back on the table to cover materials only projects and lower some of the thresholds for projects where the building owner was doing the work themselves. We could again revisit the revitalization ordinance and possibly incorporate, instead of just facade improvements to dwelling units, improvements that go beyond the facade, and the Department of Housing liked the idea of things promoting energy efficiency because the greening of the sustainable community area is one of the areas of focus also. So if we could come up with some expansion of the incentive program that talked about maybe using Energy Star building materials, something like, new HVAC systems or higher efficient heat pumps, things like that, or even Energy Star building materials. There are roofing materials that have a reflective quality so they don't absorb heat and things like that in the summer. What we don't want to do is promote somebody buying a window air conditioner that they can take with them when they move out. We don't really want to subsidize that, but if we can craft things so that improvements that are, become physically a part of the building could get some credit or some incentive through the downtown revitalization program. The state really seemed to like that idea. And the last contact I had with with DHCD, with these couple of things in mind, and they understood that this hadn't been vetted before City Council yet, that this was just the work group's thoughts. They felt like this made our application stronger and would likely result in a recommendation for approval if we added these things to it. So the basic feedback was, all in all, it was good. They wanted a little bit more on the housing, and they wanted to get rid of the greenfield areas that were, 3 of the 4 were already in the community legacy area, but apparently the thought line has changed a little bit since then. So the state doesn't really need any official action from the council, but we felt like since you guys had approved the initial document that we submitted, we didn't want to go back and make changes to it, have the state approve it without you guys being aware of what we talked about. And also, you know, I would certainly like to have some consensus or you know, acceptance of the ideas, I guess in particular on the housing. The state has pretty much said, you know, it's a done deal on getting rid of the green fields, that's what they're going to submit.
And you say Area 4 is one of these areas they want to get rid of.
Right.
Why? I don't understand that at all.
Because there's not because it's undeveloped currently. They're looking at it as a green field. And they did say if we have a proposed
plan, we have it designated for mixed urban.
Right.
But didn't you indicate that if we start something there, then this can be adjusted?
DHCD says that if we have a potential project for that area, that they will consider amending our map to incorporate that project should it become necessary. But until that time, because we don't have a pending development project there, they are looking at it as just a green field, as an ag parcel. And they don't generally include ag parcels or ag use in the sustainable community areas. So they said, you know, if you get a project, let us know and we can probably expand it, but until that time, we'd rather keep it out. So I will try to draft some language that would amend our application and have it for you before Tuesday evening. I'll try to email something out to everybody or send it through Henry or something by Friday so you have the weekend to look it over. But if, I guess at this point, I'm hoping there's not a sense of opposition to adding these things to the application. I'm not sure how we're going to address the urban mix piece because we had text kind of scattered throughout the document about the urban mix, about that area. So if we have to remove all of that, it's a little more effort than just maybe adding a footnote that this, you know, area is not currently included, you know, and may be revisited in the future. Yeah. So I'll have to see what DHCD says about that, but I would like to go ahead and move forward with the residential piece.
Fine. Jim, one more thing. I know we all know, but just remind us, why is it important that we become part of this?
We need to be designated as a sustainable community to qualify for a number of state programs, many of which we do now, and we're grandfathered until the end of this year as a sustainable community through our previous community legacy designation. But there are a number of state programs, and I don't have them in front of me, but I think Neighborhood Business Works, the community legacy program itself. I'm not going to try to list them all, but there's probably a dozen different state programs that we're eligible to apply for assistance and grants through, that if we're not a sustainable community, we aren't eligible any longer.
Good. Thank you.
Questions for Jim or Carl? Okay, moving to the new business, we have a monthly financial report.
Again, I don't want this one to slip through the cracks either. So should we put this on the agenda for Monday to give Jim the A&A, because he's going to have stuff to you by Monday.
Yeah, I think we need to do that because we've got to act on this comparatively shortly.
Well, we don't need to act, but we should be informed.
Well, we need to be in agreement.
Right.
All right, now moving into new business. Anybody have any questions on financial report? about the accounts payable. Any questions on the accounts payable? Henry mentioned the street sweeping MOU with Little's County. Anybody have any questions on that?
Well, just to further talk about that, the MOU has been drafted and sent to Littlestown. We're waiting for a signature to come back from them, and they'll have them time to review the MOU as well. Haven't heard anything back as yet. Once the MOU comes back, then it's something that you guys accept and signing.
How does the cost compare with our previous contract?
Yeah.
Okay.
How much?
Identical.
Oh, done. Good.
Any other new business? Hearing none, we'll move into council member reports. Diane, do you have anything for us?
Excuse me, Mayor. I'd like to bring up one issue, if I may.
I was going to call on the group in a few minutes. Before we adjourn, I'll make sure you get an issue. Diane.
I would just like to thank the mayor and council, the city, for all of your expressions of sympathy on the death of my brother, and thank you for the planter that was sent to the service.
Sorry for your loss. Carl?
Two things. Number one, it was a great parade. That really was. Anyone that had any part in that, you need a pat on the back. That was, I was amazed. I know you were afraid to ride with me, but it really was great. The turnout, the kids, the parents, the whole thing. It was wonderful.
It absolutely went flawless.
Yeah, yeah. It was wonderful. The police department in particular did a great job. But I think everyone did a good job. The other thing, I had the open meeting training, and surprisingly, I passed the test. So the town's legal now.
I sent the form to the state and told them,
I noticed
and they
that.
said you do really good on your computer making stuff up. Really official.
I'm inventing.
That's right.
That's it.
And with that too, I've also been.
Yes, you did pass.
I advise everybody to do that.
The last time I looked, the page was down for construction because of revising some kind of new rules that are going to take place October 1st.
I'd ask you to send the certificate back.
Yeah, I tried, but it's not working right now. Anyway, I just want to remind everybody, Harvest Fest is coming up October 19th, 11 to 3 at Memorial Park.
Yep. Yeah.
I've got two things this evening. I had two more people approach me if there was any news about the solar panel farm. Nothing new with that. And then the other thing I found out recently was that apparently there are two meter readers in front of the bakery that are not functioning properly. I didn't know if you'd heard that yet or not, but
They should report that to the city office.
okay.
Otherwise, we would probably know.
I will let them know. Thank you. And that's it.
All right, the only thing I have is MML Fall Conference is next week. I'll be attending that. I don't think there's anything else that I was involved in over the past 60 to 30 days. So now, does anyone from the audience have anything to say?
Sir, thank you, Mayor. Council. My name's Dwayne Rogers, and I'm with the current member of the Board of Zoning Appeals. I'd like to bring up a matter of some language that's in the Taneytown City Code that falls under Section 205, or Chapter 205, 43E, where maximum, it's regarding signage, and it's under commercial. It says maximum height is 35 feet, maximum sign area is 80 square feet, period. Twice this year, we've had hearings that have involved signs, and the language there doesn't specify whether it's a combined total front and back of the sign or whether it's per side. Now, if we step back one section and go to 20542, which is for downtown business, it specifies per side. But this caused a little confusion both times when we've heard these cases. So if the council could take a look at that and maybe do a change to the wording to clarify whether that's both or whether that's just per side. So,
Do you know what the intent was, Jim, when we developed that?
I interpret it for the general business district as 80 square feet total, because it does not say per side. But it is notable that the downtown business district, the way it's worded, provides for a larger freestanding sign than the general business district. So it is something that should probably be revised.
And to put what the board came up with, and because you have two board members here, is that I could have a bigger sign downtown than I can at the shopping center. Is that really what you wanted? I mean,
Well, actually, no,
mean,
I think the
even-
whole object of the sign ordinance is to reduce the size of the sign.
and even if you didn't care, if you said the minimum downtown is fine, why would you make people in the shopping, I mean, not the shopping center, but in the general area outside, go through more hoops to put signs up when people in the downtown, where there's less space, have to go through less hoops to put signs up? Because it seems that signs are more disturbing, there's more signs, whatever, downtown than you would out at the out areas. And this has caused problems, as Dwayne said, at every meeting, because the people come in and say, 80 square feet's not too big, for me to put my shopping center sign up.
Seems to me that's been a problem for a long time.
We've had a number of talks at the planning commission level, and we never seem to quite reach consensus on what would be a good proposal
Well, why don't we decide what we want and then draw something up and we can discuss it?
One thing that we did talk about, and Jay and I will probably have to really talk through this a bit, was giving the planning commission some flexibility during the site design process, so that a larger scale development like a shopping center would be allowed to have a larger amount of signage. And we'll use the shopping center as a great example. They've gone through, they've gotten variances to, add more tenants between the existing pylons, and it really isn't out of scale or out of character with that particular area. But you may not want to allow some smaller site in the same district to have that same amount of square footage.
Yeah.
But if you could let the planning commission sort of determine that as something's going through the site plan process, then you establish a proportionate amount of signage for that particular site, so that, hopefully that will satisfy that site regardless of, the tenants that come and go, based on, bigger site, bigger sign. But as I said, we just never seem to reach consensus to push it forward to you guys.
And an immediate fix, if you didn't want to get into all the details, because it always makes your eyes glaze over, is that if you put per side in that one area where it doesn't say per side, it would at least help the board in the fact that, okay, it's 80 square feet per side, and that's in the bigger areas. I mean,
Well, can I ask, you and Brad, what would be easiest for you guys to, do you have any suggestions or ideas?
As Jay just mentioned, a per side, for argument's sake, would probably simplify what the people are looking at. For example, when they did the change on the signs, the variance back in February for Kenny's, Conowago, even by their own wording that they submitted to us, was based on their assumption that they were going to go to 115 square feet. They wanted a variance to go to 115 square feet, and their wording was slightly larger than the 80 square feet that they're allowed. Well, the 115 square feet that they presented was per side. So they were under the assumption that it's 80 per side. So since that sign already existed and would have already exceeded half of that, if that were 80 square feet total, then that would have meant 40 per side. They're well over that to begin with, so the variance would be kind of a moot point, because they're already over what they're, what we would be allowing them anyhow. So if we just did it per side, it would be a whole lot simpler.
Well, we need to clarify it. I mean, we've got to decide as the council what we want, whether we want to go per side or not. And I guess the discussion needs to be, and I certainly don't want to do it tonight, but discussion needs to be is, examples like you're speaking of. I can say it's certainly practical for a Kenny's to have a 115 square foot sign, but not very practical for the Stone Hearth Bakery to have a 115 square foot sign. Although they may have that with that flag that they got out front. But anyway, somehow we need to get that in some kind of form that we can discuss. And with recommendations, I'm not sure where, when you say an 80 square foot sign, I don't, an image doesn't come to mind, you know what I mean? I don't know what that means. You say an 80 square foot sign like the sign that's in front of XYZ place, then I can understand that. So that's kind of the input that we need.
Agenda for this coming meeting, and hopefully get some recommendations out of that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What else? From anybody in the community? Well, hearing nothing then, I guess we need, the next step is to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. So carried.